Sweet rice wine, some of the oldest type of dessert wine dating back millenniums, is a surprisingly fruity and complex drink derived from just rice with no added sugar. I'm sharing a simplified method from the traditional that works on white rice, black rice, purple rice, even millet or barley. All you need is some rice wine yeast. These are special yeast treated with amylolytic fungus that breaks down starch into glucose. They come in traditional yeast balls and powdered packets. Both carry the microfungus Rhizopus oryzae. Yeast balls are made from traditional herbs and yield a more complex flavor, while the powdered packets are entirely lab-generated and can be more reliable. Both work, but in different ratios. I'm using the yeast ball. 1 teaspoon of ground yeast is good for 1 cup of uncooked rice. There's a ratio you won't forget, right? Now about the rice. Tradition calls for short-grain glutinous rice, also known as sticky rice or sweet rice. It is often used for mochi and visibly more opaque than its regular rice counterpart, which is more transparent and often used for sushi. This duality also exists among the long-grain varieties. The opaque type is commonly known as Thai sticky rice, often served with mango as a dessert. Check out my video for that if you too love that dish. The regular long grain is the most commonplace all-purpose rice found in American groceries. The opaque glutinous varieties are significantly stickier than regular rice. Within the same subgenre, short grain rice tend to be stickier than long grain. The stickiest variety has the highest amylopectin to amylose ratio. That is, most of its starches are the branched out variety, versus the single-strand amylose. Branched starch breaks down easier and is therefore preferred traditionally. Today I'll show you how to make wine with plain long grain rice. Much cheaper, more accessible, and almost just as good. Tradition calls for soaked and steamed rice. I find the rice cooker much easier with no planning ahead required. Rinsing off the surface starch first will make the rice separate more easily later. Err on the side of slightly less water, which will make a firmer rice that's easier to handle. Both are kind of optional. Feel free to use the quick setting for long grain. Subtle texture difference won't be noticeable after fermentation. Now dissolve the yeast in a little water. Rice cookers and instant pot cups are smaller than standard US cup. 1 rice cooker cup is about 3/4 of a US cup, so use 3/4 teaspoon yeast per rice cooker cup. Rinse the cooked rice with cold drinking water. If you have clean tap water or a faucet filter, this is best done over a mesh sieve in the sink. Otherwise, use chilled purified water, filtered, pre-boiled, or bottled. The goal is to cool down the rice fast and break up the kernels. Drain the rice well and mix in the yeast. Your rice should be close to room temperature at this stage. Warm rice will absorb water fast, so try to rinse quickly and not let the rice soak. Toss the rice to make sure the yeast is evenly distributed, and move the rice to any sanitized container. You can boil, steam, or oven bake the containers to sterilize. Even dishwasher heat cycle has been sufficiently good in my experience. Just make sure the container is dry and oil-free. Pat down the rice so it's evenly packed, and use a chopstick to pour out a hole to observe alcohol level. You'll see liquid filling the hole in 1 to 3 days. Cover loosely and stick it somewhere warm and away from light. In my case, I use my garage. 30 Celsius is ideal for yeast growth. If your room temperature is cooler, it'll just take a little longer. Refer to the chopstick hole to check alcohol level. In 36 hours, I have my sweet rice wine ready. This sweet rice is often cooked with mochi to make a dessert soup, or strained and steamed with milk into a soft set custard. Yes, rice wine will naturally set milk into custard. Both might be a little bit of acquired taste, but this wine definitely isn't. Just strain it through a nut milk bag, and it's good to drink straight or served over ice. This is like grape juice sweet. I mean, we are looking at glucose here, the sugar named after grapes. I personally believe this is why we call it rice wine and not rice beer. Maybe not etymologically, but the underlying flavor profile probably reminded people more of grape wine than barley beer. The cloudy unfiltered wine is honestly more flavorful. But if you really want yours clear, you can bottle it and let the solid set, or pass it through a coffee filter, and you have basically a very young sake. Once you get a hang of winemaking using regular rice, try making it with sticky rice. Both the classic short grain and the purple rice for an upgrade. Glutinous rice will yield a very sweet young wine. You might even prefer the lighter, less overwhelming sweetness of the regular rice batches. Because the branched out starch structure readily gives up more glucose, it can also produce a stronger wine with higher ABV if you let it age. I will discuss the chemistry in more detail in my blog post linked below. Compared to plain long grain rice, short grain sticky rice has lower water absorption and higher margin of error in the rinsing process. Too much water early on can turn the wine sour. Avoid letting the additional water exceed 30% of total weight of cooked rice. If you really want to add more water to increase yield, wait for the yeast to get a kickstart for 24 to 36 hours. After the initial sweet wine comes out, you can then add up to 50% more water and refrigerate for 1 to 3 days for secondary fermentation. If your rice wine already soaked up too much water, you can toss in the dry yeast in 2 to 3 additions without dissolving it in water. If you want to portion the rice into smaller jars, definitely do it before fermentation rather than after. Fermented rice will be very messy to scoop. Be sure to leave some room for oxygen, which the yeast will need to thrive. Alternatively, you can also follow the traditional method and let the rice cool down naturally to room temperature without rinsing, in which case you can easily control the additional water amount. For comparison, sticky rice will produce more wine within the first 2 to 3 days compared to plain rice, but regular rice will catch up in the following 1 to 2 days. I strongly recommend refrigerating both after 2 to 3 days to slow down fermentation and avoid spoilage. Enjoy it right away while it's sweet. If you ever have leftover rice, give this method a try. As long as it's clean and oil-free, it'll come out brilliantly every time. You can thank me later when you're buzzed. Like and subscribe!